and you weren't expecting to have a live stream. So if you're actually seeing this, I'll explain a little bit. So as you kind of know, the sourcing training, amazing hiring, this is the first time we've done it. So we're learning a lot of things. One of the things that we did do was to do a live stream with some of the Q&A with Kim and Gordon, because we kind of saw that there was a lot of questions coming out of the live training. And what I realized this week is that we never actually got a live Q&A with Anna. So I wanted to get Anna back because she did the first training, answered a lot of the questions at the end. People might not have seen that, but there was a few questions as well that I just kind of wanted to come up again and yeah, give Anna a chance to answer. One with actual daylight, because I noticed that you lost all light at the end of your training, and two, you know, without having to rush through the answers to the different questions. So yeah, welcome back, Anna.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Who is online? Welcome. Who is watching later? Welcome as well. Yeah, I covered a bunch of questions in the dark. That's true. We went over the time a bit, so I'm happy to answer the ones that are left out, or you haven't had the chance to watch them as well or be online at that time.
Oh, perfect. I am just actually trying to post it in the groups so that people can see that it's here, and if not, we will try it later. But yeah, I also had some questions that I felt was still left over that we should definitely cover, and I think the first one I had, which I think we get a lot, is, despite being strategic, I noticed that the role of the sourcer is still perceived as a junior position. First step to become a recruiter. What is your view on that?
Oh, and now I even don't remember how I answered it that night. I have a look there. So this not a junior role. It could be considered, of course, and in a lot of companies that is like this. It depends on the size of the company you work, the approach to hiring, whether there is like, some companies even don't consider sourcing as such, which is quite mad, but it's their approach and their way. And if they start to work with sourcers, they also see they don't see maybe the tangible results at the beginning, and they're like, okay, you are fine, you messaged enough people, become recruiter. However, if you approach hiring again, like indeed strategically, understand that you have to build a pipeline, and what is your goal, to hire the best one, to hire the maybe faster, or again, maybe not that fast, but cheaper in sense of costs per hire. The sources is essential part, and they take so much volume of work, and they are producing such high quality candidates that it requires you to be not a junior. And recruiters at the same time, they work so much on the negotiation part, which is completely different, and they take so much time to do that. This is the difference. Recruiters, they have this negotiation part, and as I mentioned, a lot of recruiters will agree with me that a lot of time. And sourcing at the same time, this is how you find the right people in the way that in the volume that you want them to be. And it's not to be considered junior recruiter. You have to show the advantage of sourcing, that you know the market, that you know every good company, that you know every title there, you know how to approach these people, and you can show these results to your business part or your management. They like, hey, this is the sourcing, this is what I know, this is how I approach, and this is not what recruiters do, because they do a lot of negotiation, interviewing, filtering, and I know what is not in our company, but out there in the world. So I understand the frustration and the kind of desire to speak up. So don't miss the chance. Show your results. Show what you do, and you will see how the attitude changes towards sourcing being a real thing. And I noticed in chat, actually, while I was doing my slides, that some people were arguing, oh, I'm 35, I'm still sourcing. I mean, be proud of that. It's such a cool job. There is no not.
I always say as well, it's like, look, if it's a junior role, then I got way too much. Like I've been in recruitment for 19 years and I'm proud to call myself a sourcer. But it all depends on what you see it as. If you are early in your career and your job as a sourcer, but you took the job so that you could become a recruiter, then it might as well. Like it might very well be a junior role and it's a step to become a recruiter. I came the other way around. So I started in sales in a recruitment company. I've done the whole full stack recruitment and agency. I've done the full stack recruitment in-house. But I realized that there's always the different aspects of recruitment, and some of you can't be good at everything.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily like all aspects of the role. I've been in very big companies. I've been lucky to work in some like very small startup companies as well. But I wanted to specialize in sourcing because I knew that was where I was the weakest. But also I knew that that was the thing I liked the most. It was the hunt. It was finding people. It was talking to them, finding out what's the hot buttons that I need to push with them. Yeah. How do I get the story of the team right so that I can attract these people? That the process from when somebody is in the interview process and to the kind of offer stage wasn't that interesting to me. For me, that was a lot of, it's the business partner role, it's a lot of admin, and it was just things that didn't, like, you know, after having done it for 15 years, I didn't enjoy doing most of that anymore. And I missed the hunt from kind of coming from sales. So you have the hunt of, you know, having to find your next deal. In recruitment, once you transition from agency, you don't have that hunt anymore, but you still might want to. So sourcing for me was that specialism that I could, you know, just geek out on. And I think that's another piece as well. Like we get to really geek out, you know, on tools, on processes, on, you know, like just how do we structure things like this? We get to look at things like sales and marketing. How do we pull tools from that into what we do? Recruitment do a lot of that as well. Like you have it with, you know, HR open source about, you know, what's the different processes, but to the most extent, most of the recruiter roles is very set. It's, you get a rec, you need to fill it. You know, whether you're agency or in-house, you don't have a lot of wiggle room. It's like the interview process is fairly set. You could influence it and maybe change it, but you need data for that. Whereas sourcing is, our job every day is to collect data, to find data, to find out like who is it, and we can use a lot of that to influence what we're looking for. Like if you walk into a meeting with a manager and he says, you know, I want people from these 5 companies, if you can have the data to back up why we should look outside of that, or you know what else we can do, that's the powerful thing. And for me, it's also like I always say, the sourcer is the person in that whole process that needs to understand the role better than anybody else, because we are, for the most part, the first point of contact. Either because we're the ones looking at the profiles that we end up wanting to reach out to. We do the outreach for, you know, most of the roles, depending on kind of what company you're in. So our communication, who we are, like what we actually do, we need to understand the role, the company the best to really get the best across on that. And that requires experience. It's hard to convince a candidate, if you end up having to do phone screens, which a lot of us do, to join the team. If you don't have the experience to kind of say like, what is this team? What's the difference between this team and, you know, the team that this person would be coming from? So that all requires experience, which of course you can learn that early in your career, but it's a lot of steps on top of each other. The technical things of sourcing is one thing, but actually getting that kind of insight and just being able to influence a candidate and influence a manager. And for the most time for us, is to influence the recruiter that this person is the right one, backing it up with data and whatever you have. Yeah. So that's why we keep saying it's not a junior role, because as a specialism, it's not. It's definitely something you can do. And if you're a good sourcer, you will be a good recruiter as well. But what you'll see in most companies, that if you are a recruiter, most companies, you won't have time to actually dedicate to the sourcing piece. I've worked with lots of recruiters where you sit down with them and they say they have an hour a week to do sourcing. So it ends up being, you know, sending 100 emails and crossing their fingers.
Yeah, that's not gonna fly, like, honestly. Yeah, the admin part and scheduling, and yeah, it takes time, and I honestly still manage to kind of combine, but this is the influence the pace of work. So if you're sourcing recruiter, in in my view, it's cycles. So like a couple of weeks or week, you are sourcer, like 100% going all deep there. And then you're 2 weeks of a recruiter or 3 weeks, like doing the rest of the stuff. So yeah, this is maybe the only thing how you can manage in my view, my experience so far. But otherwise, yeah, you end up with doing like 1 hour sourcing until nowhere. Yeah, that's true. And also what I noticed that sourcers also employer brand is, it's like your message, how you approach, how you present the company might matter through the like to the candidates a lot. And especially if you send like bulk messages, it's like a few hundred proper mailing, and then your message go out, they can show there like, oh look, this company texted me, what do you think? Or they showed their friends or whatever. And you are an employer brand, and you can do more as Instagram page. Like honestly, whoever watches that and does Instagram page, sorry about that, but yeah, sometimes the messaging and like spreading the word through your message matters more than any kind of classic approach to the employer branding. That's one interesting thing that I recently discovered, actually.
Absolutely. And I think we kind of answered another question that I highlighted as well. Like, how do you see the difference between being a sourcer and being a recruiter?
Yeah.
It's very much that. I mean, in a lot of companies, there's no difference as such, but it's more about one, what kind of workload you have, what your process is normally, and purely, I mean, I've been in a role where officially it was 360 recruiter, but it was 90% sourcing because the company had no incoming people. It was all either all agency or just, they had no brand in that market. I had one a couple of years ago, which was, it was a company that traditionally was in the north of England, and they were opening a developer office in London. So they had nothing there. So, going into that, I knew that the role was going to be 90% sourcing because people wouldn't expect that this company was in London, so they wouldn't apply and think of that. So we had to go out, tell the story that, yes, we're not a completely new company. We've been around for 10 years, traditionally been in the north. Now we're doing a team here. This is what the team is working on. This is the technical aspects of it. This is the team you're going to be working with. And just kind of like tell that story, and not the story about when you're going to IPO or how much funding you have, which is important for some, but especially in the technical aspect, for most, it's not really what they're going for. They are looking for, what's the technical challenges you're working on? What's my team? What kind of management is in place? What's the roadmap from a technical point of view? And then, yes, if you have an IPO, that's nice, but you're not going to be talking about that when you're pairing with another engineer daily. Like, it's just like, that's going to get you something in some years. But right now, it's like, what am I actually going to get out of bed for?
Yeah, that's that is from my perspective, we got lucky maybe with opening new offices for engineering in Warsaw and Bucharest. And one of the reasons why we choose these locations over others, because we were present there as a product. So people were taking rides with Bolt. They know who we are. Of course, they have no idea that we were in town until we started to reach out. It's like, oh, but you have drivers. Oh, now you have engineers. So I'm interested. Let's talk. So that's 100% true.
I don't know if you answered this, but it was definitely one of the ones that I highlighted as well. What tool would you recommend to track the process, or do you do it in an Excel sheet?
Yeah, I remember that question. So a bit more maybe elaboration. I'm using the combination of literally Excel and Greenhouse embedded tools for analytics. They have a bunch of them. Again, it is really important how you track everything in your ATS. And yes, again, if you have to do everything, sometimes you create a mess there, and the data might be not that much, but as far as it goes, you can use the tools really, really nicely. Part of the metrics that we measure are from there, like number of inbound applicants, number of interviews, that is really, really, it's really hard to like, sorry if I count that. But from other metrics, for example, one of the interesting things that we measure, it's pass-through rate, not in terms of like how many people pass in or not, this is a greenhouse, but personal pass rate through every interview to see who is like maybe a bit more on the tougher side, who maybe is a bit more softer, and maybe talk to some individually saying like, maybe you can shadow one more interview, what was the situation. Sometimes it's like pure and luck, of course, but in some cases.
No, exactly. I think I've had a lot of that as well from a kind of when you've handed over. I know you do a full stack recruiter role, so you don't have that handover as such. But a lot of times, if you're in a pure sourcing role, like the kind of pass through for me would be, I've done the screen, I put it on to the recruiter or the hiring manager. How many of my people then go into the interview process? If there is a technical test or something like, Codility, Hacker, whatever they kind of have in the middle, I'm not technical enough to know whether people are just total BS when they're talking to me. So I tend to try to not get to have that as a KPI, but just kind of looking at how many of them actually want to go into the interview process. I like that, as you say, I've always told everybody, and I do it myself, we always run our own stats. And it's mainly a lot of recruiters, a lot of sourcers get measured purely on emails because that's the only stat that the managers that they're working with have. And I've been in a situation like that, again, that the company that I worked with in London, that my manager was just looking at email statistics. And she had a hard time because I didn't send any emails at all for 3 months. So she was like, according to her, she couldn't really see what I was doing. But that didn't mean that I didn't have stats. So I was tracking my own outreach very specifically because I wanted to know how effective is my contacting people, how effective is my follow-up, and I track a stat that most people don't. So I'm not really interested in response rate because it's not that interesting to me whether people respond. What I'm interested in is a positive response rate. So how many people click on the call to action and set up a call with me. That tells me, whether my outreach is right or if I should tweak that. If I just get a lot of no, it still tells me that, okay, it's a decent message because at least I get a response, but I'm not that interested. And for me, it's more about what's the progression on like whether, the first follow-up or the second follow-up, or specifically now where I use a lot of video, I use a lot of other channels like Twitter and things like that. How do we get, what effect does that have? If I try to do different channels, does that change? And most of the systems that we have won't check that. Like if you use Greenhouse, even if you have the CRM function and you can make them track it, it's not going to track until you convert that person into a candidate. It's going to tell you what your history is, but not really anything else.
Yeah, it has limits, and seeing that, we measure like effectiveness of our interviewers, that is there, like some other numbers, but also, for example, we try to combine all of the engineering teams and locations where we hired, and the source, not dropping down to the source where they were sourced, but just at least like sourced, applied, and agency or referred, and we had some other metric. I forgot. And it's all done in Excel because it was the more accurate, maybe slightly manual way to do that, but it showed, and the same with the number of messages. I mean, if you send a lot of them, that's good, but we send a lot of emails. We can track them in emails, check like the system that sends them, and see as the team the progression. And I guess both Mixmax and Reply.io, so far as I know, give you team history, you can see who is doing what there if you're like deeply interested in that. And reply rate, I mean, there is certain average industry reply, and if you're below that, you're maybe in deeper trouble, but otherwise it's irrelevant. I agree with that. It's like how many people are interested.
And it very much depends. Like I've worked in a global team where we would work on anything from Australia to North America within the same week, and we could see the difference. It's just culturally, it's going to be a big difference. So we were doing the same type of people. It were all developers. In Australia, to get what we needed, we might have to only source 50 people that we send the messages to, because they want to talk. Even if they're not necessarily interested, they want to talk, because like Australia is more of a building a long-term relationship, so that at some point I might be interested in working with you. North America was the complete opposite. So whereas in Australia, we needed 50 people, we needed 400 for North America to get to the number of people that, and what we did. So why I'm saying that we had a specific number, we took it from the end. It's like, for us to get a hire, statistically, how many interviews do we need in each stage? What does that, how many people do we need to screen? And how many people with the response rate that we normally have do we need to actually identify so that we can reach out to them? And that's what we know. So for an Australian role to get a hire, we needed to identify 50. For the North American one, 400.
Yeah, I agree. We have the same stuff here at Bolt. Our number is something like 200, 250 messages per week. But not per week, sorry, per month. So it really depends. So sometimes you, again, 2 weeks of milking huge bulk and send it. Sometimes it's not, or sometimes it's relocation. It's also drops down. You're reaching out all of the good people, but you might not.
They're not interested. Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, there's so many facts if you're taking the relocation in consideration. But that rule worked out really nicely in Bucharest. You know that I sent that amount of 250 messages and I hired that amount of people that it should be. And I was like, wow, that works.
No, and I think the interesting thing with some of the countries that you work in as well is that a lot of those countries have traditionally been countries where they relocate to other countries. And I like that you did Bucharest and you did Warsaw, where like there's a lot of good engineers there, but also a lot of good engineers that they may be working in the UK or in Ireland or in Spain. But they would like to come back home if the role was there. They're not necessarily interested in moving to Tallinn, but if they can move back to their own country, that could be interesting.
Yeah.
And kind of looking at that, and I think that's a good solution. A lot of companies are kind of looking at that. Do we do remote team, or do we put it in somewhere else? I spoke to an engineer who'd been working in the Middle East, and his company like put a European hub as well, because they realized it's like actually relocating people to the Middle East was a big hassle. So if they could do a European hub to get those people that they would normally relocate, that would make things easier for them. So I think we're going to get more and more of that, where kind of companies are looking for where's the hotspots of people that we normally hire, especially if they do a lot of relocation. Not everybody's in a country with 1.3 million people where you have to relocate, because unless you get locked down for a lot more months, there's not going to be a lot more people coming out of Estonia. So, you're kind of used to having to do that.
Yeah, that's true. We have to do that. And the future is looks a bit different. And more companies will consider hubs. I guess more companies will move towards remote work, or partial remote work. And they started to have some remote teams, and maybe relocation to some not the most exciting place will be good. Like remote work instead of relocation will be a good choice. And however, it brings some a bit more challenges on management, particularly of engineering management. A lot of companies start to look for good engineers, engineering managers who can manage the team remotely. That's a bit more harsher task to do, but otherwise it's something's going to change. That's definitely in the air right now.
No, and especially now, like all of those companies that for years been saying like, oh no, it's not possible to work from home. Like, the last 2 months they've had to find a solution because there was no other way. And all of a sudden it's like, well, I guess it was possible. And, they'll be able to see what the velocity have been. They'll be able to see what the productivity has actually been and things like that. And they've had to make it work for 2 months for the most countries. So it's like, now it's like, okay, we can't really say that it doesn't work because we had to make it work, but like how much that will we need to offer? At the same time, especially developers, a lot of them don't necessarily want to work from home because it's about the pairing. It's about, who is it you interact with daily? You're not just sitting in front of your screen and coding all day. There's more to it than that. And because like the kind of IT industry and developer role is a lot of like, they've been sitting in front of their computers since like a lot of them since they were 10 and 15. It's like, You don't become a developer because you want to sit alone in front of the computer. You want to, for the most part, become a developer because you want to sit in front of a computer, but develop something together with other people. It's that creation piece. Otherwise, they would have just stayed at home and do freelance projects. So yeah, it's a bit that mix of being able to offer remote for the people who are interested in that. And a lot of that is people like me that, we have family, don't necessarily want to relocate, things like that. Or, people get to a point where they want to spend more time with family and maybe going to an office or being in that isn't what they want. Or just, they from countries where they traditionally had to relocate, and now kind of more and more, it's like, well, okay, I can be close to my family and still do this job. But yeah, it's about getting that balance through where you have the possibility for people to be co-located and work closely with people and have that social interaction. And at the same time, that is like there is the flexibility options as well.
Yeah. I guess it won't go full more remote, definitely. Like some creative spirit and collaboration. It's not gonna work out for it's gonna work out for some companies, but not for most of them. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, there's some things that need to change. Okay, another question was a bit longer one, and I don't know if you got to it. Hello, I have a question about follow-ups. Let's imagine I have 6,000 contacts and 4,500 of them are engineers, and I've reached out to about 3,000 to 4,000 of them earlier. So does it make sense to have follow-ups with all of them every now and then?
Yeah, I remember that question and I remember my answer. The answer was that take it in smaller portions and again reach out. Don't send like all of this 4,500 messages again. But take portion, take some kind of schedule, that this one I reach out like last January, so maybe this July is a good time, and divide into the groups, maybe some personalization groups or something, and or maybe the one that you really want, or the ones that are, yes, they fit the job, but let's see, and someone who might not be the best choice, but you still want to check it out them and interview them, see whether there is more, and make some kind of schedule and reach out to them as well. And I did the same. I had a bunch of people that I reached out before, and we opened 2 new offices. And when you do that, again, as we just discussed, some people, oh no, I don't know who you are. You have 3 people here in Bucharest or here in Warsaw. I don't want to work with you. But in a year, it was something like 30 plus office already. So it's already, you have more people. Something is going on. Let's talk about that.
Yep.
And just use the same contacts, the same candidates, and maybe filter out a bit more the ones that were like maybe not interested in your stack. That's it might change, but most likely not. And in groups, follow up. You can even mention when you had the first conversation.
And even with Stack, I mean, with the way that most companies go today as well, there's a lot of Stack changes. It's like, a lot of companies are like going the way of doing Golang and things like that, moving away. They get a new VP of engineering or new head of engineering, and that, she brings something else and says, I know that if we switch to this, it's going to run, so you never know. So whenever you do, like, talk to your engineers, and when you know that there's a change in the company, that could be a new, the new CTO, a new management, whatever it is. And some people didn't join because of whatever it was, but I was like, whenever there's a change, in terms of a tool for that, one of the tools that, depending on what your budget, like this is some like a lot of the kind of things that you can do with no budget, but it requires a lot of manual work. Look at a company with a tool like Candidate ID, which is very much that. It's like, if you know that the people you have in your network and the people you reach out to is your people, the ones you want to talk to, you've already reached out to most of them, start looking at from a nurturing point of view. Lever, ATS have a nurture product as well, similar thing. It's about where you track what those people are doing. So when you send them an email, like both Anna and I will always track whether they open the email, whether they click on our links and things like that. But tools like Lever Nurture and Candidate ID will take it further than that and actually say, like, what if you send an email to somebody, but they haven't responded, you still have them in your kind of network. And if they start looking at your career side, if they start looking, clicking on your manager's LinkedIn pages, if they start doing things that would make it look like they're interested in your company, that will start triggering something on your system. So instead of you sending emails every 3 months, you send your email and you just send them updates. Like a lot of what companies are doing, especially for engineering, is just sending newsletters about engineering stories for the people who could be interested in. So rather than just, a lot of companies have these talent networks and do absolutely nothing with them. It's just, we don't have a role for you, sign up for our talent network, use it for something. Do a monthly newsletter about what's going on in our office. One of our engineers have written an article, this is what it is. And with those, you keep top of mind of those people. So, the engineer has a bad day or what it is, and it's like, oh, hold on, your company is the ones that I keep getting relevant content from. Let me check it out. And on the back end, you start seeing like, these 10 people have been clicking around on job ads and looking at our people. How about we, give them a call or write them an email now, rather than just trying every 3 months.
If you have such tools, it's like magic. This is like, again, the prioritization. You can have these ones that are really interested in you, and you like first them, and then maybe the rest of the people. And I also, when I do that, you can mention like directly, hey guy, don't start the conversation like, again, like you never met this candidate. I was like, hello, my name is Anna, like nice to meet you. I start usually with some questions like, hello, how are you doing? I reached out to you in like last November. You've been busy at this company, how's life now? Instead of like, this is one of the, I guess, quite a mistake of the recruiters and sourcers to make it that never happened. But if it actually happened, just play the scene. And it's also a bit of a personal touch. So I know that I reached out to you in November, not December, not October, and I know that you worked in that company, and it adds a bit more, and it's super easy to automate. It's just like, easiest thing to do.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I did it as well. The last client that I had, we looked at people who'd applied for job, 3-4 years or 2 or 3 years ago, like that had been in the interview process and for some reason had gone out. Most of them because they didn't do the technical test. If you're in a company with Codility and you have any kind of seniority in the roles that you have, most of them will not do Codility. Or if they're interviewing for more companies, they're going to choose which companies they're most interested in and do the technical test for them.
Yeah.
So we reached out, and I was very clear about like, look, I'm reaching out to you because you've applied for a role before. Like, I'm not trying to like, oh, I got your email somewhere. It's like, I know you've interviewed with us before. This is what changed. I would love to have a conversation with you about where we are now. Like, we have a new CTO. This is our interview process has changed. Tech stack has changed, things like that. 2 years ago, you won't know if you're not looking at them. Plus, I know these people are already interested in my company because they've taken a step to apply before or to be in an interview process before. Yeah. So, I know that it's not a cold completely. It's people who are already interested. And I think Nieves, I interviewed like another sourcer in Spain. She said, look, even people who, they go out of my interview process because they take another job. She has a habit of still following up with them after a month or 3 months they've been with the company, because we all know it's like we take a job and it might not turn out to be exactly what we thought it was going to be. So, she's had a lot of where she's like, I've had hires that, was late in the interview process for us, took another role. I contact them a month, 3 months into their job and say, like, are you happy? Did it work out the way you wanted to? And they're like, well, no, it wasn't exactly what they kind of promised. And then, gotten them into the process again. So things like that, thinking of it as a constant process and not just, oh, this didn't work out. Let me find another list of 1,000 people to reach out to.
Yeah. And if you're limited by size of the market, this is the way to roll. It's not starting from every time saying the same.
No, I mean, if you could only hire people in Estonia, then you
have to know,
very well that like you would have to have an event every day, because like it's like you're gonna have to know them personally, otherwise they won't come to you.
Yes, you literally sometimes know people by name. So.
Okay, so one question I liked as well. Many candidates told me that the first reach out should always contain job title, job description, and salary. I think it's valid. What are your thoughts?
One more time, job description, salary.
And job title.
Depends on the role. So an approach. If you're trying to build a pipeline, let's say like backend or front end, and you have a few roles. So I have backend role. This is usually the one that I work the most. We have 5 teams. They do different stuff, but it's one profile. Then we have the few teams that are working with React framework from full stack. Then they have pure mobile React people, web version, and you also can be a backend in the same team. If you're building the pipeline, you kind of cut a bit on the candidates when you say like, I am looking only for this front-end React mobile role. However, you can hire from one, let's say, bulk messaging on some LinkedIn reach outs. You can hire someone who wants to be backend in JavaScript, someone who wants to do web, someone who wants to do mobile. So if your goal is to build a pipeline with specific skills, job title is not relevant, as the same as job description, actually. If you're looking for one particular let's say MySQL DB developer, this is where you put the job description, this is where you put the title, and you're looking one specific, maybe like 10 people, but the same one profile that doesn't have much variations.
No, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to say never. 99% of the time, I do not put a title, any seniority, or any job description.
Yeah.
And the main thing is like, I am not technical enough to make sure that I have gauged people's seniority from the profiles that I've seen. And I've burned myself many times with trying to offer a too junior sounding role to somebody who is more senior. Whereas we all know, like, especially if you're in-house, whatever your role says, if the right person comes along, your budget increases, like for whatever it needs to be to get that person on board. The title can change with getting an approval, which is going to take you 10 minutes if that right person comes up. So I would rather have that I'm fairly vague in my outreach. I tell more of a story, and I ask for a call to discuss what they could be looking for rather than what I'm looking for. And I'm honest with people. It's like, look, I have a number of different roles that we're always working on. I want to understand what you do and what it would take to make you move from where you are now. And like, I've just seen that, like, if I put a specific title, I alienate some people that's just not going to answer me. And they're like, I'm only interested in senior roles. Like, well, I have them as well, but you look like an idiot because you didn't kind of put that in as well.
Yeah, that's true. The scene with the descriptions, or it's kind of maybe not a question. I would like, I also put, for example, we are looking for senior, like software senior engineers and future technical leads. So you give so much potential to the person from being just software middle level engineer to become technical lead. If someone has ambition to be leadership, this is the perfect opportunity for them as well to check it out. So yeah, and in terms of the salary, that's maybe the most tricky part, because in the end you might don't know who you will hire, mid to senior team lead, engineering manager, and it's kind of pointless to put the salary on. I
mean, I always say, if I can, and most companies you can, I would always give people a range. Yeah, but after I've talked to them, if I can see after having talked to them for 10, 15 minutes, roughly what kind of what kind of level that they're at, I roughly know what they would end up being like, put in as if they get hired. So I can give them a range, and also just, being honest, like, look, this is the upper part of our range. If you get the job and we fall in this range, would you still be interested? Because I don't want to waste your time or everybody else's time. And like, but I would never put it in my first outreach, because like my first outreach is about getting them on the phone with me or a recruiter, depending on what kind of role I'm in.
Yeah. So the first email, sometimes if your salary is like above market and it's like,
put it in,
shoot, of course. But are you shooting for someone who is a bit maybe more interested in technical challenge in the product, in the team, in leadership, or just the pure money? Money is still on the table. They're not going anywhere. They're number one, but maybe not in the first challenge.
Exactly. You said that you test your outreach on real people. Are these people within your company? One person
Yes,
asked.
yes, that is my real part and my real advice. Yes, this is the people from my company. I usually choose a few engineers from the even different locations, different titles. I put email with some random person name, everything how it should be sent, and I send them this email. Maybe put some comments in Slack saying, "Hey guys, I sent you that. Please do reply," or even caps lock in the subject after the actual subject, like, "Hey, this is the test, give Anna feedback." And most of the people are turning back and they say a few words what they think. And this is the real engineers. They get in, like, I don't know, tens of these emails per day sometimes. They know a few things that they particularly like or don't like, and inside of the company, this is the people you want, and this is their reaction that you want, so maybe you should listen to that. And also, I'm super happy to work with one of the strongest teams in Europe in terms of engineering, and they do have a lot of reach outs from different companies, and some of their advices I honestly use. So always, whoever listens to that, always turn to your team for that. This is the people you want, and this is the reaction you want. Test on your colleagues. Just give them a notice like, "Hey, my name is Anna. I'm here, a recruiter, maybe new recruiter. Nice to meet you. Let's grab a coffee. I've sent you email. Give me the feedback."
Yeah.
So it's
no, absolutely. If you're lucky enough to work with a team of engineers, yeah, use them. Ask them for their feedback. Ask them for whatever kind of questions you ask, whether that's your interview process or your reach out or the places you look. If you keep looking at a place and then you're not getting anywhere, it's like go down to them and find out like where do you hang out? Where do you get approaches from other recruiters? And very much as you said, like, look, make them share whenever they get these approaches from others. Like, make them share the good and the bad. Like, if we want bad recruiter outreach, there's lots of Twitter channels and GitHub repositories about that. But what we don't get a lot of is good ones where they say, "Look, I'm happy, but this one was actually good. That was something that actually told a story that would make me interview if I wasn't so happy." And you're not going to get all of them, because if they're not happy, they're not. But just that you can kind of get those and start collecting. And it's like, what's good and bad look like, and the people that I'm trying to reach.
Yeah, that's 100%. And I wanted to add something, and I forgot. Damn. About the reach outs and the feedback. Okay, I will maybe remember.
That's right. There was, I think there was one on that as well. A bit more understanding on how to approach if my talent pool is tiny.
Yes, I remember that question as well. Make it about the follow-ups. And I also saw some comments in chat. Someone wrote, "Make it about personalization." Whoever you are, you gave the perfect advice as well. So yeah, that's the combination of two. You can do quite a lot of research and say like, "Hey, I saw you. Let's say we met on the event. If it's like Estonia, most likely you met someone."
We met at some happy hour somewhere.
Yes, at this conference. Then we also make it about timing. Try to keep up the relationship.
Yeah.
Don't start again from cold. Don't be surprised like, I bet I interviewed in your company like 2 years ago. Start with that. You interviewed in our company 2 years ago.
But lots of things change. We double the size now. We're like, let's talk again. Yeah.
Let's talk again.
Yeah.
So make it about the follow-ups and building the relationship. Make it about personalization, and also listen to market in the sense that sometimes people share stuff like, "Oh, that company doesn't do well. Maybe people want to leave it," or other way around. "This company doing magic work, so most likely they will stay. They got just some bonuses." The bonuses is a separate topic. Some companies do give bonuses in certain days, like of the months during the year, and most of the people are ready to move only after getting those bonuses.
The day after, yeah. They'll interview before, but they're not going to leave until that date.
Until that date, until they earn their bonus or stock or whatever.
If you've done sales recruitment like me, that's all you do. Is like, once your financial year, when does your bonus get paid out? Because there's like they might interview, but they're not going to move until April when the bonuses get paid out, because it's like just too much money when half of your salary is on a bonus.
Yeah, so such like very like small things, but these matter so much to get people on board and to find the right timing to approach them.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's good and bad news. Sometimes it's like again bonuses, financial years, closing the staff or selling the companies or and so on. So this also helps you in your small pool to do. And I know that a lot of companies invest in education might be a choice. Again, what kind of profile you're looking, if you're looking for someone more junior, maybe time to invest and get like trainees, juniors, and so
Yeah,
on.
exactly. I mean, I've worked with companies that needed a lot of people, and they work very beneficially with the likes of the coding schools and those, where it's people who maybe had another career and they switched to become a coder, to do a 12-week intensive coding school. And yeah, they're not going to be very experienced, but they have the basics. Take them in. But you get a very diverse group of people that come from those coding schools because they haven't done 4 or 5 years of computer science at university, but they might have done 10 years something completely different. So you get a completely different kind of view and look at that. And at the same time, it's like, can we work with the local like universities or schools and whatever it is, so that they come from there? But also start looking at, like, is there other kind of, if like, I know a lot of I've worked with companies where something like a Salesforce administrator was a role that was hard to find because you needed people that kind of had, it's a certification and things like that. So they worked a lot with mothers that was returning to the workforce, getting them retrained into getting the certification so that they could do the job. Kind of working with, like, what is it that we can relatively easy invest in something that they can upskill, and then they will have like so much more value as an employee, but at the same time that we know that we're going to need these people. So kind of look at that.
Yeah, no, that's again, and if it's a small market, sometimes people are so scared to invest in like education that they will learn here, work 2 years, and go away. Small market, there is not much where to go
No.
sometimes, and they actually will be happy to stay longer in your company because they feel like they've been invested into. So yeah,
And I think a lot of it is about thinking maybe less of, yeah, if you're reaching out to people, be as personal as possible. If you have the time, and I spoke to Eve, who used to work for Facebook, and he said I'd probably send 250 emails a year, because like the people he was dealing with was the senior level.
yeah, that
So he's like, there is 10 people in the world that can do this job. You take an hour or 2 hours for every email that you write. You do a lot of research before you do that. So if you're in a similar kind of market where it's like, I'm in a very small country or a very kind of, whatever that is, and we can't hire from outside, what do we do? Then yeah, it is like you do have the, maybe have the luxury of taking 2 hours for each email and really crafting it, doing a lot of research and finding out what would make this person want to talk to me and what would make this person want to interview with us. I use video a lot. Again, that's the kind of middle ground. I don't have 2 hours, but I still want to do something personal. So like actually putting a video is like, why is it I'm reaching out to you? It's a template, but it's not an email. So it doesn't look like a template. I make it about the person, actually use their name. I have mini whiteboards where I write their name on and things like that. That's something that I can do 20 of them within an hour, which isn't like if you do a couple of hundred, which is good because I can do 100 emails a week. That's very personal, but without having spent an hour on each. So things like that. Think about what can you kind of learn. I look a lot at marketing and a lot on sales about what tricks are they using to become personal, and that's the one of the things that I picked up with that. So think about things like that. And do events. If you are in a company that the talent pool is very small, then become the main place for people to go. Like your engineers, if you have the really good engineers, do monthly meetups where you talk technical things. Don't make it a recruitment event. Just make it a meetup. Sponsor if your tech stack has something special and there isn't a big community in that specific tech stack, then make one. Like, meetup, you can, like, that's where I would go to source most of the time, because I know there's always a group on meetup for that specific technical skill. And if there isn't in your region, then make one. Like, there might not be a lot of Go developers in your country, but I'm sure there's some. And if you start doing a Golang meetup in your city, you're going to get everybody, like they're going to come from wherever they are to actually come to that because they want to learn as well. So, think about things like that.
Yeah. And one of the mistakes that I think some companies do, and it's not like I'm a bit judgy in that sense. That's big conferences. Big conferences are perfect. You can cover a lot of stuff, but think twice. Sometimes if you are on a budget, if you want to have someone very specific, like Go developers in the country, where is like 5 of them. So maybe do event inside of your company, show your office, tell your story, show your team. Like, hello, Go developers of our country, this is our team. Please talk to them, meet them. And I also, when we do sometimes events in Bolt, we also invite our own engineers to mingle. So they can also maybe catch up on different topics. So for example, in your meetup, you will have 4 very not much engineers from 4 different teams, and they can tell you, yeah, I do like fraud, or I do dispatching, or I do completely different product, Bolt Food. This is how we do it. So yeah, that's
we used it as a sourcing strategy before, inviting everybody. We've done sourcing for the meetup, but being a lot broader than I would normally be, because I didn't have to go into details. I just needed people to get there, because I know that people who take time out of their evening and actually go to an event like that is the kind of proactive person that I want to meet. But then afterwards, like the day after, sit down with my engineering team who were all there and said, was there any of the people there yesterday that you had a talk to and you thought was very interesting that we should pursue? You kind of have an informal first interview, because you have that, like, okay, this is somebody, like they came up, they asked about, what the company did, and had a really good conversation. No, she seemed to have the right kind of technical skills. I would like for us, if we can get her in for an interview, let's do that. Use it for that. And then if you do that one a month of those, then, you're going to get a completely different way of thinking. Like a lot of companies do that for recruiters as well, where it's like, look, we have these, we all go to these recruitment conferences. A lot of companies just use them as like, oh, this is a place for us to find out who's who, and to, to do an informal interview with people.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. I think that's the kind of ones that I had highlighted. Anna, if people want to stay in touch with you, and they maybe have some more questions that we haven't answered, how do they best find you?
LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm on all of the groups of Amazing Hiring. So please feel free to reach out to me, add me, and ask your questions. I am always trying to reply to most of the stuff. And for those who speak Russian, I have an online session this Wednesday. If you are interested, ping me. I will be talking about coming to Estonia, living in Estonia, about our teams, how we hire. The language is Russian this time, but it should be interesting as well. I might even send the link to the group. That's actually
put the link in the group. From what I could see, a lot of Russian and Russian-speaking countries have signed up. So I'm sure there's more out there that would like to see that. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you, Anna. We are back again on Monday with Balázs for any kind of leftover questions from his training. So join us there. Thanks, Anna.
See ya. Thank you.